Hey guys, it's Core Ross, and today I am playing Star Wars Outlaws. This is a new game by Ubisoft. Of course, most Star Wars games are made by EA, but they kind of lost their exclusivity, so Ubisoft is getting a crack at it, and we'll see how they do. But I thought we'd focus on a couple of things in this video today, and especially things that might not be covered by others. So I want to give you a guided tour of the new ship in this game, because to me, ships in a Star Wars game are super important. Ever since I played Star Wars, the Knights of the Old Republic, and I met the Ebon Hawk and fell in love with her. So I'm very much looking forward to showing you guys around the new ship. And I also want to show you the mini games within the games, because again, that's a Star Wars trope that every Star Wars game has its own little games within the game, usually card games or stuff like that. So I want to show you what we've got in this game, because there's betting on horse racing, there's card games, and there's a game as well that I wasn't able to play in this demo, but I got to see a little bit of it. So let's begin with the ship, which is an EML 850, but that is the model name. You actually steal this vessel and name it to the Trailblazer. And let's actually use one of the bad guy characters here to actually give you some lore on the background of the ship, and then we'll do a tour of it.
K-Vest isn't working alone.
Before I built Zarek Besh, my family built ships on Corellia. Did you know that?
I did not.
This model, the EML 850, inconspicuous, virtually indestructible, perfect for the underworld. But they were expensive. Durasteel plating alone cost a fortune.
There was a BX Commando.
Unfortunately, there were other ships that could do the job for much less.
I just need more time.
I hire you because you are one of the best hunters in the Outer Rim. Then I tell you someone broke into my private vaults and stole one of the last EML 850s in the galaxy, and you assumed she was working alone. Do you know what happened to these ships? Destroyed. Repurposed. Scrapped. Do you understand?
I'll find her. I just...
So the bad guy there did a pretty good breakdown of this vessel. It is rare and it is very tough. It's also, I would consider it to be a flying brick because it's actually quite a simple overall shape. But let's take a look at it. You've got a cockpit here with multiple seats for many people if you want to have them on board. You've got access ladders right next to me that go up to turrets above as well. And then you've also got a lounge on the right hand side here. Asymmetrical design too, with the cockpit off to the left of the vessel. And this is actually my favorite feature because once you walk into the lounge area and actually kitchen and bedroom, this is just cool. I can see into the cockpit. And of course, this window gives you a great view out onto the planet you have landed on. So this is a dark one, but here is a nice bright planet, giving you an idea of how the lighting changes depending on which planet you're on, and really changes the mood overall. Then you've got yourself a very nice and well-stocked kitchen here. And this actually leads straight into the sleeping area where there is 3 bunk beds. There's no captain's quarters or anything like this. And this is what I love about these Star Wars ships, is they're small, but they're also definitely functional and believable. There's also in here a little news screen. You can go and see what the latest news is as you play through the campaign. And I could actually imagine living on this ship. I think it would be very cool. Let's have a continued tour through the vessel. So as you leave the kitchen area and cockpit, you head into 2 corridors. This is kind of the more cargo-y area, which has a workbench where you can customize your blaster. And then you move into the loading dock at the back. And there's a locked door back here that I presume you get into at some point through the campaign, which would be the engineering maybe. But we do have a toilet. Not something you usually see on a Star Wars vessel. But yeah, this is a locked door here that I presume is maybe the engine core or something like that. You can look in the window, but nothing too descriptive in there. It could also be for data. I guess it could be a vault as well. And then you've got this beautiful big loading dock out the back, which you can leave by. You can also leave by the secondary door on the side as well. But let's take a look outside. And we'll go to a little bit more of a sunnier place so you can get an idea of this. She is a beaten up ship. You can see she's went through many atmospheres, but you can customize the coloring, you can clean her up, you can do whatever you need. But you can see those big guns on the front, very powerful. And you can see how, although the cockpit is asymmetrical, the way it's designed into that glass panel at the front, it actually makes the whole ship symmetrical on the exterior, which I think is actually a pretty unique way of doing it and very good. You've also got these beautiful engines on the back which fold out as you're accelerating or hyperdriving, and yeah, overall she's an absolutely gorgeous vessel. And at first I wasn't sure I was actually going to like her because she is just a flying brick. She is a rectangle and that's kind of it. And I think it might have been that I do prefer the non-symmetrical cockpit layout, which this doesn't look like it has from the exterior, but then once you get inside it does. So I gotta say that's probably the thing that won me over. Now the ship is fully customizable, so you can go in and change the blasters, the projectiles, you've got missiles, torpedoes and ion missiles to choose from, so you've got a lot of options here. And although she is a flying brick, she does fly pretty damn well. You've also got upgrades to cosmetics as well, so you can change out the thruster color, but also you can change out the actual hull color too, and you unlock that as you play through it. So plenty of stuff to do, and I like the fact you can customize a ship. And in most Star Wars games these days, you don't usually use the ship in actual combat, but in this game you actually do. So yeah, quite happy with the fact that this game has a little bit of everything, but problem is it good at any of those things? And for me, the space combat felt very similar to Starfield. So if you played that game, I think it's relatively similar. And you have a primary weapon, your blasters, secondary weapon, your missiles. But a nice thing that Starfield doesn't have is you can fly straight in through the atmosphere and land on the planet seamlessly with no loading screens. Although I will say there's a lot of fog and it lasts a while. It's obviously loading everything up, so it's just a fancy loading screen. So even though it's cool as hell, it's not quite on the level of say No Man's Sky, where you really do fly down from the atmosphere into the planet and land. Whereas this, there's definitely a foggy loading screen in there. But I would say that for a game that is not as focused on space combat as Starfield is, I feel like this actually does it a little bit better. Now, before we move on to the next subject, which is the games within the game, let me know what you think of this ship in the comments below now that I've given you a tour of it and shown you it in action. So let's move on to the games within the games. So for as long as I remember, Star Wars games have always had, at least the open world kind of RPG stuff, has always had games within the games, whether it's card games or whatever. And the last one was the best, which was Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which had this NPC game where you could choose NPCs to fight in your little army against another player's little army, and it was so good. I could have easily played that more than I actually played of the main game. I loved it that much. So in my early access to this game, I decided to keep an eye out for any of these little mini games that I could jump in and try, and the first one I found was Kessel Sabacc, and this is a card game. It's pretty simple as well. You have to get yourself a pair of cards, and those pairs have to be less than what your opponent has, so the closer to 0 the better. And this game does have some good depth, so you've got different modifiers you can play, and your opponent can do that too. You can also cheat, so your little pet can actually go and check out what cards the enemy has, so you can get an upper hand on them too. So you have that as an option. And overall, once I got used to the mechanics, this was super easy to win a game of this, but this also was the first one I ever found, so presumably this is the easiest of the NPCs, as you'll be able to play this game on different worlds against different opponents with different abilities, and presumably they will get harder. Now the next game was something that took me right back to the arcades when I was a kid, and that is betting on horses, or the one I used to bet on was this little mechanical thing where you put like, I think it was 2 pence in, and you could bet on the horse you would think would win, and they would have little figurines that would move up and down, so it's pretty cool. And this is basically very similar. You've got horse racing here that you bet on. You get some numbers on who potentially will win, and then of course you bet on them to see if you can win. It's overall pretty decent to play, but I think I'll get bored extremely quickly. So I do expect this to be a little bit of fun, but not by any means something you'd play much of. And then the last minigame that I found was this arcade machine that appears to be a space game, maybe something like Asteroids or something like that. But unfortunately, this one wasn't working in the build that I was playing, so I don't know what it's called. I don't know what you do in it, but the graphics on the actual screen look freaking cool, so I'm hoping this actually ends up working pretty good, because it looks like it could be an absolutely doozy of a little game to play. Now, my early access only lasted a couple of hours, and I was only able to go onto a few different locations, so I don't know if there's any other mini games hidden in this game or not. And I doubt that I just stumbled across all of them, but who knows, maybe there's more out there. Now guys, we'll end this video on a quick conclusion about Star Wars Outlaws and whether of course you should buy it. So first of all, it's a game that's trying to do everything. You've got space combat, you've got stealth, you've got just open combat, and you've got some giant open worlds that you can cross very quickly in your speeder, but they are big nonetheless. However, I would also mention that this game doesn't exactly hold your hand like, say, Jedi Survivor, that goes with quite an open world setup, but with linear paths to follow. This one has a lot of rocky bits that look like, oh, I could just, Jedi double jump up them. But no, that's not the case. We're dealing with a girl here that doesn't have force powers. So getting around these open worlds doesn't feel as intuitive as it does in, say, Jedi Survivor and such. But it's definitely a good world to explore. The world's also very full. Going around the areas with a lot of NPCs walking about makes the whole universe feel quite alive. And even when you're out in the open world, you run into a lot of random encounters. You also find actual roads with speeders going down them and stuff like that. And you have ships flying over that land and everything. And overall, it does seem quite engaging. But what I'll be curious about when it's fully released, which is going to be on August 30th, is how that open world works with the overall storyline, because Jedi Survivor is good at having quite a open world, but keeping it nice and linear and keeping you going in the right directions at times. Whereas this game, you could easily get distracted quite significantly. So I'll be curious to see how refined an experience it ends up being, and if they're trying to do too much in this one game. And then of course, will Disney let Ubisoft make other Star Wars games in the future? Anyway guys, if you're looking to buy this game, you can buy it with my code on the Ubisoft store if you want, and that is code COREROSS. But anyway guys, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.